Welcome everyone to Access Europe, the December meeting. So I'm going to be doing an updated version of a session I did for DevCon in April, annotating Google Maps with Access, and the grammar police amongst us, that's Adrian, will be able to sell that the word annotation is not being quite correctly used, and I'll ask him to explain why it isn't later on. But anyway, at this point I'm going to move on. Get the cover slide here then. Just showing you on there two different maps that I've downloaded from Google. It could equally well be Bing Maps or OpenStreetMaps or indeed Michelin or any of the other available online sources. I'm just most familiar with Google. You can do pretty similar things with each of the others as well. What I'm going to cover today then is I'm going to talk you through basic simple mapping, where you need to actually specify a location, and that location can be a postcode or a zip code in America and the equivalent in other countries, or it can be the coordinates if you happen to know them, or it can be a full or a partial address. For example, if it's a common address for a tourist attraction like the London Eye, that's sufficient. Otherwise you can put in a full postal address. You also need to tell Google what size map you want, for example 640 by 400, etc. You need to tell it a zoom value, which is a range from 1, the whole Earth, through to 20, which is rooftop level. Map type, there are 4 different maps available in Google: road map, terrain maps, which for towns look pretty much the same, countryside looks different, satellite with photographs obviously, and hybrid maps, which are a combination of road map and satellite. And you need to obtain an API key from Google. Depending on what features you want, you need to enable one or more APIs. It's a free key, but for those of you that have got involved with it, you will know that these days you have to, when you sign up, give your credit card information, and then they have the right to charge you if your usage exceeds a certain amount, which is still a very generous amount, though knowing Google, at some stage in the future they will reduce that. I've only ever in 5 years been charged once, and I knew that was going to happen, and the charges were exactly what I calculated they would be, so I was happy enough about that. Here is an example of a URL for a static map that you can download from Google, and it's actually this particular map. It is for the London Eye area of the centre of London there, River Thames going around here, and you can see then you've got the Google base for the static maps, which is HTTPS maps, etc, 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 through to here, and then everything after the question mark is the arguments that you're adding to tell it where you want the map to be. So the postcode SE1 7PB, they put a plus sign in the middle here, zoom value of 15, which is a good starting point usually, the size 640 by 480, and I've told it I want a hybrid map. And then obviously I need to put in my API key, which I'm not going to show here because I don't want obviously everyone using up my credit card allowance. So the aim of today's session then is to demonstrate how you go beyond a basic map and personalize them for your clients. Then you can use similar methods with other maps, Bing and so on, but I won't cover those today. Topics that I am going to cover though include the use of marker points, and you can see here I've put a red marker with the letter A at the center of the map. I can put a circle around a location, and then within that circle I can actually show places of interest. Up to 20 can be shown at any time, and you can tell it what particular types of place you are interested in looking at. Boundary shapes, where if you have boundary data, for example for a postcode or a county or a state or whatever, you can actually show that on the map as well. You can put lines to join 2 or more points, route planning basically. And finally, you can add various feature styles to your maps. For example, you can show the main roads and the local roads in different colours, and you can also add places of interest such as parks and so on. And I will show you each of those later with the example application. Each of the things I've just mentioned there are added as additional map layers on top of the basic map that you're doing. So we start off then with the same starting point here, the Google base location, the Google static maps base. Add the location, I've done it here as coordinates, zoom size, map type, and mark colors, in this case blue, normal size, what label I want on it, X in this case, and where I want it to be. Again, it's in the center of the map in this particular case, it could be somewhere else. There are limitations inevitably with all of these different types of maps. The main limitation is that the more things you add, the longer your URL is going to be, and we are still lumbered with the antiquated Internet Explorer based web browser control. By default version 7, though you can upgrade that to version 11 or to emulate Edge. You're still limited with the number of characters. In the standard control 2048, with the ActiveX control you get all of an extra 45 characters allowed. That's a bit of a problem because it will not allow you to do all the things I've mentioned in the last page. Another problem is the fact that if you need JavaScript for your maps, I'm not going to be using that today, but if you do, you will no longer be able to use that within Access because Internet Explorer browser control does not actually work anymore with the JavaScript API. One solution for the character limit is to use static maps downloaded as images directly, so you don't use a browser control. And if you do that, you're limited to the Google Maps limit. Now, on their documentation, on their website, it says it's 8K or 8,192. In fact, it has been doubled since then. It's 16K, 16,384, which with a bit of clever trickery, you can actually download any of the types of maps I've been talking about. However, in the near future, as you will have read in the Microsoft roadmap priorities, they are currently working on the new Edge browser control, and I reckon it will probably be released by March. It is certainly well underway, but it's also nowhere near finished as well. But it will solve many of the current issues. Probably not all, but many. Any questions before I go on?
A couple here, Colin.
Yeah, a couple. Yeah, sorry, a couple from Alan and one from Ant.
Right, okay, let me see if I can find them. Alan. Oh yeah, I've tried that and I didn't find it at all helpful. It actually made things more difficult to code, partially because you've somehow got to know what all the 3 words are for a particular location. The advantage of doing it the standard way is you just literally feed in the place you want. You don't have to do anything special. What 3 words is an interesting idea, but I haven't found it useful. And that is exactly what I said earlier. You said about the credit card allowance. You will see an API key later on, but it actually is a dummy one. I'm not showing the real one. The one I'm going to show you doesn't actually work. I thought ahead. And yeah, just look at, and is the order in which you add layers important? No, although I always put the key at the end. Anything can be done in any order whatsoever. It doesn't make the slightest difference. You can restrict an API to an IP address or HTTP refer. Yes, you can do as well. What I do with mine is I release my apps with no API key, and you will need to, or the user will then need to download an API key and actually add it to the app. But I'll talk about that later on. Before I get onto the quick example then, just to say I've got a lot of different mapping examples on my website, most of which are free. First one here, get geolocation from photos. If you are somebody who takes a lot of photos, you may get very confused about where those photos were taken. And so if we go on here, and I've got a folder here with a number of photos, some of my dog and so on. And this is of a llama here, and that one was taken on a dog walk where I used to live on the Mendips there. And basically within the JPG file it contains a load of EXIF data, unless you turn that feature off, from which you can extract the latitude, longitude, altitude, even the direction you were looking at when you took the photograph. And so you can actually get then a map based on that. And if I take another one here, I can't remember if this one of my dog has actually got location. Yep, different place in the middle of nowhere. So you get the idea with this. Another one. Now, get current geolocation. The original version of this that I put on the website used the Google JavaScript API, and that no longer works. So this is an older version which is not as good. The old JavaScript one got it down to house level exactly. This one will tell you my approximate location based on mobile phone networks and Wi-Fi nodes, and basically where I live, there are not too many of those, so it's not particularly precise. I do live somewhere near this place, somewhere on this map here, but I don't live where it says there. It's accurate in this case within 1570 meters, but if you live in a town, you will probably find that it gets you pretty close to where you actually live. And you can see I can zoom the map and so on. Postal address lookup, I'm not going to show you this one because it's actually a free version of something that I'm actually going to be demonstrating, and this one allows you to actually get a list of addresses for any particular postcode or place of your choice there. It only works for the UK though, that particular one, just from the nature of the data source that I'm using, but again it's free. The one I am going to show you is my UK Postal Address Finder app, which is a commercial app. And I'm not doing this to try and actually sell copies of this to you, but because it happens to have data for all the UK postcodes. And so if I now click on that, and the example app that is now available on the website as of yesterday is a cut down version of this particular app. And that one is free here. So when this when this application opens, then the main screen shows a number of features, only one of which I'm going to show you from there, and it opens to two different maps of the London Eye. Again, I tend to use this as my starting point because people have heard of that. If I now click on Start Update, it will change those to a random postcode every 5 seconds, and I can then look through and I can decide on whether I like the look of one of those, and if I like the look of one of those I can select that postcode. And if I now click on here, where is it? Somewhere in Manchester. As far as I know, I've not actually got any addresses for this yet. If I click to use this one, yes, I haven't done this one before, so I can now download those addresses. As you can see then, it's found 52 addresses in Rylandt Street, Manchester, wherever that is. And if anyone in the UK would like to give me a postcode, I will get a list of addresses for that postcode. If somebody could turn their microphone on.
NR20.
Sorry, I heard. What was the first bit before the 20?
NR.
NR20.
3RN.
And whereabouts is that?
Here.
I guessed it was.
Close you are.
I guessed it was here.
Right.
And after a bit of flickering there, for some reason, it tells me it's in Breckland,
right.
which doesn't tell me anything at all. Where roughly is that? Where's that near?
In the middle of God's own county. County of Norfolk.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Johnny. Is there somebody else?
CR20 BJ.
CR2.
0 Bravo Juliet.
Okay. So, and so on. To get these addresses though, I am using a paid service. Each one of these searches is costing me the grand total of 3p, so that's your lot for tonight with that. And now I'm going to move from that then onto the main part of the demonstration, and the rest of this is actually included in the free example app. So we'll start with the web browser control. There are 2.6 million UK postcodes, but I'm restricting this in the example app and here to these 15 here. So if we take that one in Bristol then, tell it the zoom factor, I'll start with 14. Tell it the size, giving you those 4 choices there, and the map type, I'll start with road map. At that point then, okay, I'm going to add the API key. And now, having got this far, it then tells me how many characters are in here. Remember, my limit is 2083 on an active EPS control, 2048 otherwise. I'm well short of that. I can now show the browser control, and I've got a map for that particular place with no details other than the basic map. You'll also notice, though, it's pulled a typical address for that area, and it's done that with another Google API called geocoding, and it's reverse geocoding the location to get a list of addresses, and it does that as a JSON download. Okay, it's a map, it's not very exciting, so let's say where that map is centered on. Okay, and you can see an X there for the center point. Let's zoom it in a bit more. And then you can see some road details at this stage as well. I can change that to a hybrid map. And you can see now the satellite photo plus the road details there all labelled on there. I can add a line on the map if I want to, for example a vertical line, or I can change that to a horizontal line. I can change the colour, purple, I can change it thickness, and you can, purple's not very clear there, so I'll change that color again to back to red again. I can also change the label from X to B in this particular case. It has to be one character. It can be a number or a letter, but it's just one value allowed. You can change the size of that. And if I go, you can't get any bigger than normal. Strangely, you can't have large. You can go to small or tiny, and if you do either of the last two, so you can just about see it there, you lose the caption label there. So I'll go back to normal. I can also change here. I can have across, diagonal lines, zigzag lines. That's too high scale to show the zigzag, so I'll just reduce that back down again. I don't know what use a zigzag would be, but you get the idea. You could change it to have a rectangle, or even, I tried my hardest to get...
Can you move it?
No.
Can you move the line, Colin?
Oh yeah, I could do, yeah, if I wanted to do so there. I could move any of these things, but the way I've set up the example app, I could only do that by literally changing the URL here, putting in different values here. And just to show you that I could change this on the fly here, if I change that to here, the center of the map now will update when I do this here. Hide that, show that again. It's gone to a different place by changing that there. Right, so the full app has a zoom and a nudge feature, which I've got elsewhere in the examples. I'll show you then. Let's change to a different place. I'm bored with Bristol. Let's turn off the octagon. Let's go to a vertical line again and reduce the width of this. So the question, I think it was John asked earlier, or Ant asked earlier, yes, you can put any of these arguments here in any order. So I've done it in the order shown here, but it doesn't have to be that. So I've got the location, the zoom factor, the size factor, the marker, what color it is, what size it is, what label, a 1, and where I want it to be. If I want to move that marker to a different place, I will just change that here manually, and when I update that, hide and show again, it's gone off the screen completely. I don't know where it is. I may change that too much. So let's just turn off my marker for a second and turn it back on again, and it's back in the normal place again. I can have a circle, as I mentioned earlier. The circle, I can actually tell you what color I want the border to be, what size I want it to be again. Certain colours work better than others. For example, what Google calls black is actually a greyish colour here. That might work better with a road map, or I'll come back to that in a second there. With a road map then, and you can see the problem with road maps is you can't see the colours of the roads very clearly here. But so let me just change it back to hybrid again. When I'm on hybrid, or if I use satellite, you've actually got a scale factor. The default is 1. If I change that to 2, it will then zoom in on the map still further, giving you a very sharp image as well. It doesn't work for road map and it doesn't work for terrain. It only works for the hybrid and the satellite ones there. Change it back to 1. Boundaries. Now with this, and I'm going to turn the circle off a second here. Oops. Boundaries here. Now I've got an area boundary. The postcode area for Aberdeen is huge, so therefore you can see it's actually all shaded in a sort of pale green colour. If I reduce the zoom factor, still not enough, reduce the zoom factor down to about 8, you can now see that the Aberdeen area, postcode area, covers the whole of the northeast of Scotland, and therefore it's not particularly sharp or precise. On the zoom I had before, it's covering more than that there. If I change it to district level, it's a much smaller area. You probably can't see it there. If I now zoom in again, and you can just about see it if you know what you're looking for. And now you can see that there. You can see there the size of that area there, and you can see the sharply defined areas here. Now the postcode boundary data is not available from Google. You need to obtain that separately. I obtained it from a website called Dougal, or you can obtain it directly from the post office. It's chargeable from the post office, and that sort of data there is very useful, but it is also a large download, so be warned. I have, with the example app, supplied all the data that you actually need though. And if I change that now to sector level, which is one level down still further, the postcode area Aberdeen was AB, the district is AB10, and the sector is AB10-1, and then after that you get down to zone and individual postcodes. And now it's shrunk still further. If I increase this again, you can see the area is still nice and sharply defined here. If we go to a different postcode though,
Colin, there's a question from Crystal. She's asking if this demo database is available for download.
Yes, it is, Crystal. I'll give you the link later on. It was put on my website yesterday. Not this one, a cut down version of this one, but it contains the two forms I'm using here. So it's the same ideas are all available to you with all the available data, and it's with full code as well. While I'm looking at the chat though, OpenStreetMap, I did try it recently and I did get some script errors. I didn't try turning off those by putting it on silent, so I don't know whether it does still work. Google Maps do work, except for many of the Google Map APIs work, but as I said earlier, the JavaScript one doesn't, nor does the Embed Maps API work on IE anymore. So hopefully when the new Edge Browser control comes out, we'll be able to solve those two features. But that's not an issue for any of the things I'm showing you here anyway. Okay, styles here. Let's just now change this back to roadmap. And I'll keep the boundary, well, I'll turn the boundary off for a second here. I'll turn off all these other features apart from the marker there. And now if I add the style checkbox here, I can choose to add the main roads in one particular color. I choose blue because it works well, and I can add local roads in another color. I'm choosing grey, but I could change that to what they call black, which is actually a dark grey, and so on. So you can actually get quite a nice set of features by doing that. If I bring the scale right down, that was too far, and change it to London, if I could find the one there. I can't. I'll do for a London one here, and you can now get a road map of the main roads for England and so on by doing this, etc. there. So I think I've covered just about everything on this particular one. There's a few additional features on the other, but what I didn't show you there was actually exceeding the limit here. So if I go to a rather more complicated area here, and ZE is the Shetland Isles. I'm not sure, I've forgotten why it's ZE. The Shetland Isles consists of a large number of very small islands here, and if I actually just do it at that level there, it's not a problem here. I'll just increase the scale slightly and scroll down a bit. But now if I put the boundary information in, you can see that I've exceeded on the sector level there the 2083 characters, and an error message comes up. I've put in my own custom message here to say you can't do it, basically use a static map instead. Can I get any boundaries with this one? Yes, I can get district level, 2042 characters at the moment, which is just literally scraping in below the limit there, and you can see I've got a boundary, not particularly precise boundary, it can lose a lot of C as well, but you get the idea. It's just about possible with that one. But sector level, as you saw already, you get an error. So let's, at that point, move over to the method I normally use, which is to scrap the web browser completely and use a static downloaded map. And the features of this are pretty much the same as before. So let's put in a whole series here. I've got the London Eye on there. You've seen that one already. Let's go to there, which is the middle of Wales. Let's go 12 size. Let's go for satellite this time. I'll add the API key. Just to reinforce the point I said earlier there, this key here is no longer a valid key. If you tried to use that, it wouldn't work. So I'm actually behind the scenes using the real API key here. So I can generate the map, and that's a really exciting area. As you can see, the middle of nowhere. Again, reverse engineering to get an address. Somewhere in there, there is at least one house. And with this one, I'm actually going to have to generate the map after each of the set of changes I do. So we've got quite a few houses in the middle there. Let's add the marker. And just here, concentrate on the number of characters. Going up, but it's still very small. Circle. got a lot larger here, and notice when I get onto the circle there that instead of recognizable coordinates I've got a bunch of squiggles here. The coordinates for the circle that is going to be drawn around here, okay, are actually done as encoded coordinates, which shrinks down the size they take in the URL. The border, line and so on, we're up to 794 characters. I can change the size of that circle, of course. Change it back again. 500 worked quite nicely for this. Now let's start adding some boundary information. So we'll start off with area, and we're up to 2,164 characters, which is slightly above the limit I could have got with the web browser control, but it's still fine. Let's add a style information here. So we've got the road maps and so on as well, sorry, road colours in here, and I'm not sure what I've just done there that's actually added that, but we will actually worry about that later. Let's change this now to district level, and I've realized what I did. I actually am at a high zoom level still, so I'm just going to shrink that down, shrink it down a bit more, and you can see now the boundary for the district level here. If we go to sector level, the figures are getting larger still, 5,000 characters here, and I've still got a sharply defined area. Where I've got enough characters to spare, I'm using real coordinates for the boundary data. That's all this lot here that I'm scrolling through. Where it would exceed the limit, I encode that as well to get a shorter set of values for that. I'll show you these two with a different map, I think. So let's go to London. Generate the map, change the scale, change it to hybrid, generate. Right, we've got a fairly small scale map of centre of London near the British Museum, area called Holborn, and I'm only at 951 characters at the moment. Again, not a problem. At this point though, it might be worth just showing you the nearby places feature. Now when we do that, it instantly changes it back to road map so you can actually see what's going on. And I've now got 20 maximum markers for different places of interest within here. Now in the full app you can specify whether you want to look at restaurants, pubs, banks, whatever. In this though it's just the nearest 20 that it chooses here. But if I chose any one of those, for example that looks like a pub, it opens another form. Sometimes it doesn't update the map automatically here with this one, but I've now got the full details of the Oldie Mitre in Holborn, which looks like an old pub, one I've never been to. You can get any of the photos that they've uploaded to Google. You can get where it is, phone number, its website, when it's open, how far from where you are now at the centre of the postcode there, what the price level is, and even some reviews. A perfect little hideaway pub for an after work meet and so on, etc. So you can do that for any of the places that are listed here. So if we go to Bleeding Heart Bistro, which I've never been to, again we get some photos for that, etc. Okay, so you can do that for any of these. All this data is available from Google. As I said, the one thing that isn't available from Google then is the boundary bit. So I'm going to turn off the nearby places, turn on the boundaries again, and at this point we're on hybrid map again here. Turn on the style, if you see what I mean. Increase the zoom factor here to 15, and we're absolutely fine in terms of the number of characters. 10,339 no, because of this boundary information, the sector information. And the sector is actually split into several parts here, as you can just about see, and that then is adding a lot of information there in terms of the URL length. And if I scroll down on this, because again it's still within the limit, I can show all of those without any sampling, without any encoding, but I am still encoding the circle because I don't lose any definition by doing that. Let's add some extra information to that. Places of interest, parks are often a good one here. Let's make them green. And if we now generate that map, hopefully there are some parks in that area there. I can't see any though. So let's go to a different place where I know there are parks here. Back to the London Eye again. and we put in the parks here, and if we go to road map, might be able to see them more clearly. There we go. Right, any of the parks then are now labelled and highlighted in green, and we can change that if we wanted to a different colour here and generate the map again, and hopefully that will update. Nothing seems to be happening for some reason at the moment. There we go. Okay, you can now see them in orange. Not particularly obvious colour for a park, so we'll change that back to green again, and you can see that change. Depending on the type of map you use, you will either get the shape filled in, or if it's something like a hybrid map, you will see it actually changed it to label those. You can't see them very clearly in here. It puts the labels in green instead. So hopefully you get the idea of this. Let me go to a different postcode now for a more remote area, and this is part of Scotland near Ben Nevis. And let's turn off the circle. No point having the places of interest on this. Not much in there. Let's now turn on the boundaries, and let's start with area, and it's a huge area again, so let me just change that to a lower zoom level. Still too big. All of these, every time I make any of these changes, it's downloading a new map. My limit is about 22,000 of these a month. So as long as I don't do 10 of these demonstrations every day for the next month, I'll be all right. Okay, so we've got our area here, 4,000 characters here, and it's still well within the limit, so I'm using the real coordinates. Let's go to district. And it's actually shrunk it this time, which might surprise you, and the reason it's shrunk it is because it's now starting to sample the data. It's only using certain data points to make sure I stay within the limit. Let's change this to sector. Back up again here, let's generate the map, and you can't really see it that scale there. And you can see you're getting some degree of approximation with this boundary shape here. But if I go back to the Shetlands, it really shows you the approximation far more clearly. So we go to generate a map. We're now at a reasonably large level here. Let's put in boundary information. If I can click that, it seems to be ticking it twice for some reason. And change it back to area, and you can now see that I have got some very noticeable approximation in terms of the boundary. If I do a small scale, it's not so obvious, but the larger the scale, the more obvious it is that it's approximating here. It's still recognisably the edge of the island shape here for that area, but it's not as precise as I'd like. And that's because to get the number of characters within that limit, I've had to drastically sample. To go to district level, I'm sampling even more, and I'm encoding all of those as well. And when we generate that, you can see it's actually still showing pretty much the same area there. Go to sector level, and it's getting a bit slow in terms of this. And if I increase the zoom level now, you can see here that it really is approximating to some fairly rough blocky shapes there. Now the total number of characters in here is 3,500 basically. If I wasn't encoding the coordinates, and if I wasn't also sampling them, the original data for the ZE29 postcode sector is over 90,000 characters for the boundary alone, which is far in excess of what anything Google will actually allow you to do. So what I've done, as I said, and this has all been done for you in the example app, I went through all 2.6 million postcodes, leaving it to run overnight, encoding, sampling where necessary, and bringing the data down to manageable levels. I've provided all the data already encoded, but I've also provided all the code for you to do your own encoding if you're from another country or anything else you want to do there. File size for downloaded maps. The downloaded maps are tiny. There you go. So I have got there on here 3 downloaded maps there. The basic map I'm using for all of these different things is map.png. In this particular case 144 KB with all the layers added there. The map 1 was used with the nearby places, fewer layers there, 54 KB, and the place photos are very small again. So all the maps are generated on the fly and they're all replaced each time. If you wanted to, you could save them to individual files. I don't choose to do that. I choose to overwrite them each time because they're so quick to download. There's no point in actually keeping them as far as I'm concerned there. So yes, you could control what they name by just changing the code there. Alessandro, can you tell me the first of these things that I should look at in the chat? We've done OpenStreetMap.
There's a question from Ant asking if you can create routes on the map like the Garmin navigators can do. You can plot points to create routes on a map.
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can do that just as well. In my commercial app, I started doing that, and I got a large part of the way there. And in the end, I thought, all I'm doing is recreating what Google provides for free. I can't be bothered. So in the end, the one thing that I'm not generating myself is the route planner or route planner, as you pronounce it there. So yes, it can be done though, and Google tells you how to do that as well in their documentation, which I will show you a link for that later on. At this point then, if I just go back into the app, and I've shown you pretty much all I want to actually cover in here, then as I say, what I've done is made sure that I can fit things within my limit here. As far as I know, in the example app, you will never, on the static maps demo, exceed that limit there. If you do, you can just do a bit of tweaking there, but I don't think you will do with the way I've actually altered the data by encoding and sampling there. Is there anything anyone else would like me to show or go back to quickly before I come out of the example app?
Yeah, I'm a little bit feeling like I'm drinking from a fire hose here with the information you provided. So if I understand correctly, you're using the British postal code just to get into an area. What would I have to do, here I am in Vancouver, BC, Canada, to get an example map in my area? Right. Be kind of cool to see that.
Yeah. Okay, so you need, for your area, to get a list of whatever the Canadian equivalent of postcodes are for just a particular part of Canada or for the whole of Canada. So, as I said, the full app that I'm using here, not the one that's actually going to be available on the website there, has 2.6 million postcodes. Then that information then comes with when the postcode was introduced and so on, latitude, longitude values. I'm sure you can get equivalent of that. There is a whole series of extra features in here as well, some of which I got from downloading the postcode information, some I got from elsewhere. You won't need all of this lot by any means. So basically all you really need is the equivalent of the postcode and the latitude and longitude values as well. If you want boundaries, then you will need to actually download that data as well. So this is the data downloaded from a different source for the postcode areas. And as you can see here, each of these points here is for the, in this particular case, the Aberdeen postcode area, and that's the encoded version on the right there. And for the district level, then it gets much more coordinates typically, even though it's a smaller area, and again the encoding. Now there's no point showing that in detail, it'd be more sensible to show you a query based on that. So if I now go to postcode area path length here, and if we go back into alphabetical order, right, so you can see here then all the postcodes for the Aberdeen area. As I said, I could expand that down and it will cover many more lines there. The number of characters and the encoded version and the number of characters for that. Now, because the number of characters in most of these postcode areas is not that big, it doesn't matter that it's only shrinking those values down slightly, 1600 to 1100, about 2/3, 700, oh, this one here, 1700 to 1100 and so on. When I get onto postcode districts though, the path lengths, okay, they get much, much longer. So this first one here, the length for that postcode area is 33,000 characters. You're never going to get that fitted in, so I've encoded it, and I've also sampled those points, taking just enough points to get a degree of accuracy, and I've got it down to a similar figure. Again here, similar figures and so on. When I get down to sector level, if we can just find that here, postcode sectors, there we go. Right, and I've got them in order of maximum size here. ZE29, that was the Shetland Isles again, 33,000 encoded, sampled down to 240, so I've drastically sampled that. Why have I done that so drastically? Well, you'll see if I just filter down to that one particular area, there are actually 35, I think it says, it's hidden by my zoom information here, 35 or so different areas, sectors that are all part of, sections that are part of that sector. So I need to take the total length of that. So if I take the total lengths, all these queries built in, total length there, okay, is 92,000 characters. So that's the total, if you like, distance around that area. Total length of the coordinates 85,000 encoded down to 1200. So what you need then is data sources, in answer to your question of a few minutes ago. Data sources for the postcodes, where they are, what they're called, and if you want the boundary information, then a different source, and I can't obviously tell you what's available in Canada, but the UK is more restrictive than most. You might be able to find all this information is available free.
Colin?
Yeah.
You know that fire hose that Jack was struggling with?
Yeah, I think I'm struggling with it now.
You just turned it up to max.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I think with this...
Well, maybe and maybe not. Again, I want to summarize what I understand here. So through most of your demonstration, you did the boundaries, but you also did stuff that was available from Google.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Right.
So if I said, gee, I'd be interested in trying this out for my local area, as long as I wasn't trying to demonstrate or show boundaries, then Google's going to be able to provide everything. And all I need is some way to get to the latitude, longitude of where I want to center the map. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes, it is, because coming back to the original point. Right, I put the first part of this series of articles up last May. Only yesterday I put the second and third parts up, and the example app then, okay, is a much simplified version, but it's the same sort of idea basically. So if I just click in this a second, I'm not going to demonstrate it all again, but just to show you what data you've got then. And oh yes, I forgot to say there, with this, if you check on the API, that's where you would put your API value in. I won't show that because it really is the real API in this particular case here. So this is all you really need for this to work as I've done it here. So this is my 15 postcodes, the area and the equivalent levels going down to sector level and even zone level. Latitude and longitude, you don't actually need them, because Google will recognize those postcodes. It will recognize zip codes for America and probably recognize the equivalent for every single country. You don't need altitude, I just thought I'd leave that in. You don't need grid reference, I thought I'd leave that in. And the built up area was only used to actually put the description in places like this. So that's all you actually need in the postcode thing, or the equivalent. The natural postcode there, and if you want it, convenient, latitude and longitude, but not essential. I've then got the area information with a bit more detail here. I've got the boundary information, same as I showed you it before, already encoded, but the code for doing that is included in... This is all explained in the web article, by the way. As I say, you don't need to do this because it's already been done for you, but you can use a fairly complicated algorithm which I got from Google and then simplified it. It still works, you don't need half the things they do, okay, and that will allow me to encode my data. And here, to get my nearby places information, I drew a circle. I then used a different Google Maps API called Nearby, or called Places, and then I downloaded a JSON file which had got my Nearby Places data. I then read that file and then put that information into a table. And the table, I've hidden it, I'm rather foolishly here, so I'm just going to go to Navigation Options, Show Hidden Objects, and Table Nearby Places, and there I've got a list of the 20 places around. Again, it's the London Eye here, with the Google's own specific identifiers here, and all this information is downloaded free from Google. And the actual file it came from, though, the JSON file it came from, is this. And I don't expect you to take any of that in, but basically I used my JSON analyzer in order to actually pull the information I wanted from there. Okay, and the detailed information as well, if I can find that. Nearby place photos. Again, each photo has been identified and which place it actually relates to, and then the list of reviews. A Perfect Little Hideaway Pub, you may remember that from before. I hope I haven't taken the fire hose up to whatever the next level up is, space level, but hopefully what I'm saying is, with a bit of study and reading my article, you should be able to see how I've done all of this. If anyone wants me to explain some of the simpler code, I can do so. And John Hees has said you can use the geocode API to derive a lat long from any world address. You can indeed. As I say, you may not need to do so. I just find it easier to explain what's going on. I can then nudge the map, which I didn't show you that, so let me just jump back into this once more. Let's take a postcode here, Guernsey. Map type, road map, add the API key, and when I actually add the nearby places in with this, I've forgotten the point I was doing there was. Okay, then
You're going to show the nudging, Colin, but I'm not sure the nudging works on the static map, does it?
Oh no, sorry, it doesn't work on this one here, right? It works on this though. Don't know why it does that right there. So nudging, okay, so nudge to the right a bit more, nudge it up a bit more, left, home again, increase the zoom, reduce the zoom. Oh, what I didn't show you before with this here. So if we now, oh, I can't show you this on there. You can actually, on the other maps, you can get up to rooftop level as well. I don't know if I showed you that, so maybe I should do here. So if we just go to hybrid and we go to 20 and we generate a map. Oh, that was really bright. Let's go an area I know, where I used to live in Bristol. And if I turn off the circle there and generate the map again, you can get, as I say, down to rooftop level. If you do it with these maps here, actually changing the scale to 2 doesn't give you extra magnification, it gives you extra sharpness, increases the precision of that. I think I've covered all I want to do. As I say, the code is covered in the articles online. Anything else before I do come out this permanently?
Now there was a question from Neil asking how do you encode points, but I guess you already
How do I?
the code.
Yes, you covered that. You showed it was a bit of Google code that turns it into a binary.
Okay. Has Adrian yet worked out why the phrase annotate is not quite appropriate?
It's part of a title, so no, I don't see it is.
What you can't do, and I really wish you could, if anyone knows that I'm wrong and can tell me how to do it, I'd love to know. All of the features I've shown you are all documented. Google documentation is actually very good. What you can't do is add a text box or just a text label over your maps, which is why I don't put the address over the map. I put it as a separate text box. You can't annotate by actually adding text to your maps.
Oh, so you're saying it's not the correct word rather than a grammatical error?
Yeah, it's not the correct word, but I can't think of a better word. So I've used that one, and I know it's not correct. Right, useful links. Anyway, again, all of these are mentioned in the web article then. Google Static Maps Developers Guide, there's the equivalent for each of their different ones there. One that covers most of the features, doesn't cover road styles and place of interest styles there. Nearby Places has got its own developer's guide. You'll need to have both of those APIs, and if you want the addresses, oh I forgot to put that one in, then you need the APIs, all three of those in your API key: static maps, places and geocoding. Articles about the browser limit, hopefully not to be something we need to worry about much longer, are these ones here. Three of those which are quite interesting here, and I love this title: How long of a URL can Internet Explorer 9 take? That's great English, that one. Somebody mentioned earlier about OpenStreetMaps. Increasingly you will get errors with a lot of maps in web browser controls. You can turn off a lot of those errors, but there's also some fixes you will want to do. For example, to change the emulation of your browser from the old version 7, which is about 2003 or so probably, up to version 11, the final version, or these days the Edge browser. So all of those links are on the website. And I don't know if Karl has arrived yet.
I'm here, Colin.
Hooray! Hello, Karl. Welcome.
Hi, Karl.
Hi, all. I'm a young, talented programmer from Vienna, Middle Europe. And
you're going to be presenting next month at the very early part of January, Wednesday the 4th, just after all of you have sobered up from New Year, hopefully including Karl. And Karl is going to be doing a whole series of tips, tricks and tools, somewhere between 12 and 16. So I've called it a baker's dozen. Do you know what that means now, Karl?
yeah, I know it.
Right. Please tell us a little bit about next month.
Well, I will tell you everything about Access. No, just some small tricks, some tools I've come over. Well, as I said, I'm a young, talented guy. I have done some programming in the last few years, and I'll show you, for example, a tool that generates QR codes. It comes from Israel, you know, where all the spyware comes from. So you will use this X, I will show you. Or I will show you a tool that generates professional test data. It comes from the Netherlands. And some tricks inside of Access, inside of VBA, some things that don't get mentioned so often, that are kind of overlooked for some decades. I will show you some examples, or how to code things that you can't, that don't exist in VBA and things like that. How to get exit codes from other programs, etc. Things you don't come over every day, I hope. Not everything will be new for everybody, of course, but I hope with about 15 things, there should be something for everybody.
Thank you. Right, your baker's dozen sounds like it expanded to 15 here, so
it always depends on the questions and on the things that don't work if you present them. But I've done that kind of presentation several times at my German conferences, and so I know you shouldn't be too exact with the number of things you show.
And I'm sure everybody already knows that Karl has for many years organised the DevCon conference, which is in English, based in Vienna, these days online only, and also the AEK, if I got the letters right, conference, which is a German conference. Is that in Hamburg, isn't it, Karl?
No, it's in Nuremberg.
Nuremberg.
Yeah, and sometimes in Hanover and Cologne and Düsseldorf, but normally it's in Nuremberg.
Right, and that this year was both live and online there. And have you decided next year about DevCon live as well as online, or is that still to be decided?
It will be online again. It's too difficult with all the travels and the COVID still there, etc.
Any questions for Karl? As I said, I'm very grateful that he's actually volunteered for what Karl is long notice, but short notice for everybody else. And again, he's helped us out because unfortunately, planned presenter for January is actually having an operation and won't be fit in time. But he'll be back, as Peter Bryant, he'll be back in May. Any questions of Karl?
Well, look in the chat, nobody's interested, but we'll see.
Everybody's more than interested.
I gave you some kudos. Always great.
Could he promise not to play his guitar or his ukulele?
It's the guitar of my daughter. That's why It's mid-sized between ukulele and the real guitar.
Right, it seems that link isn't working, so I'm just going to load my website, and you can see here on the recent updated pages then there's now 3 articles. There's also 3 others that link to them, and in the third of those you will see the example app that I showed you at the end there, and also you will be able to download that from somewhere on this page, which of course I can't find now. Sorry, it's gone haywire. After all those images, you've then got much of the code, and then after that you can then, as I say, download the app, play with it to your heart's content, and translate it for Canada or whichever other part of the world, Vienna, you happen to be in. Are there any other questions on the chat that people want to actually ask of either Karl or me?
Well, Crystal said, Karl, sounds great. How about QR codes? That was for Karl.
Yeah. Karl, is that being done in Excel or is that being done within Access?
It's been done from within Access, but it's a little exe, EXE.
Right, because I've seen
that I use there.
I've seen it in Excel, and I've also seen X crossing or something, Xing or something like that can actually do it within Access as well.
There's also a variant from how is he called? The guy Pinot.
Daniel Pinot.
Daniel Pinot does it with some JavaScript, etc. But I just use a few kilobytes of an exe, and it works great. I'll show it.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And all of the code that you're going to show us on that time will be available to us as well?
Yes, for a few euros.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, right. As I said, that's the series of articles and all the links there. You should have all the information you need, and you can email me if there's anything that does need further explanation. Okay, I think I am done. So we have had something like 20 odd people, which is great. We've got a lot of next year already booked. Some of them we know the person, but we haven't got the full details in terms of the precise topic, but that will be firmed up over the coming months. But there is still room for others who would like to volunteer themselves. I would be very grateful for some new people. Otherwise you're going to get me and Alessandra every single month if you're not careful, which you don't want, I'm sure. I heard somebody snigger in the background there. So
it's almost worth volunteering just for that.
Well, that's really what I was hoping, you see. So, okay. Anyone want to raise any comments before I let you all disappear for the night?
Well, I would like to add to what other people have said. That was very impressive. Thanks, Colin. That was a great presentation.
Thank you, Jack. Whether or not that gave you enough information for you to be able to adjust this for your own needs, I hope it will.
Oh, I think that's excellent, Colin. I certainly will download your articles and read through, and you've provided great starting point to say the least.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yep, very good.
Thank you indeed.
Crystal and Ed.
Yes,
And
it was just so good. I have so little words. I'm so floored, Colin. Excellent. Just really, really good.
Just out of interest, Colin, where did you get your boundaries? Have you bought them from one of the path suppliers?
No, I didn't pay for them. Dougal.co.uk.
Yeah, it's a great resource for free stuff for the UK.
No, it's good that I've only seen district level free before. I've not seen it go down sector level.
Yeah, it doesn't go beyond sector level, unfortunately. Anyway, www.dougal.co.uk gave me a lot of information, but the main part of the information I got from the Office of National Statistics, ONS, which provides a free download of postcode data every quarter. It's huge, and you have to do a bit of work on it. Everything on Dougal is free, same as everything from the Office of National Statistics is free. Okay, I'm going to sign off now and go and get my tea. Have a lovely Christmas, all of you.
Excellent. Thanks, Colin.
Cheers.
Colin.
Thank you all
Colin.
for turning up. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.